Welcome, everyone, to the Dyslexia in Adults podcast. But this week is going to be a little bit different. We have Kati, who has been working alongside me as the community director of Dyslexia in Adults for probably about 3.5 years at this point. So she knows me very well. She knows the theories of what we are trying to do with Dyslexia in Adults very well. And what we thought would be interesting is to have a conversation between us and to give you a little bit of an overview of the work she's done to better manage her dyslexia and how to create success, because hopefully it will show you some themes of what you need to do in your life to mimic the same. Kati and I are going to be honest, we're going to be real, it's going to be a very raw conversation, and I really hope you enjoy.
I'm also going to just be an absolute nut. So I hope everyone's ready.
I mean, this is us with our raging ADHDs, just doing being real. So, Kati, you have worked with me for 3 years now, and seen quite an evolution. But I wanted to ask what prompted you to reach out to me and tell a little bit about the story of how we started working together and what it was like.
So I think it was right post-COVID. For some reason, I'm a vicarious reader. I love books, specifically science fiction and fantasy. And for some reason, I was like, I'm going to start an Instagram account for dyslexic girls who like sci-fi or dyslexic people who like fantasy. And I'm just going to update people on the books that I read. And in doing that, I set up an account. It's called Dyslexic Reads. There is literally nothing posted, but I made myself a logo.
I didn't even know this.
You didn't know any of this? Yeah. So I
didn't know this. Secret behind the scenes.
Secret. This is the real motivator. And so I was doing research, and I was like, well, who else is out there? What else is going on in dyslexia? And I was just searching on Instagram, and you came up actually. And I was like, oh, this is cool. She's got relatable content. And this is way back in the day, when your branding was still the baby pink.
Yeah, the branding is so ugly. I look back on it now, horrendous.
It was I remember it
was okay. I remember it was, I think, June 2020. So I think it's just over 3 years.
I had followed you a little bit before then. So I'd been lurking for a minute and seeing your posts. And actually creepy. You were I know, right? Like a secret Natalie stalker. What was I doing? I was just watching your posts. And one day a story came up or a post came up and you were like, oh, I'm thinking about hosting this class. Would you attend? And I was like, yes. I was like, I know a ton about my dyslexia, but yes, I would attend this. Just because I've always been interested in the scientific side of it. And I hadn't done a lot of research or work into my dyslexia since I was a kid, little kid. And so it was just one of those things where I was like, okay, cool. So I signed up. I took the first class that you ever offered. That was fantastic, by the way. I wish we had recorded it way back when. That would have been
you do have to say that.
Cute. Little progression. We could have done a little flashback. Sorry. I'll stop with the marketing. But it was really, really great. And from there, I reached out after the event and I was like, this is a long shot. I was like, hey, here's my story. Here's a blog I wrote about me. I would love to help you in any way, shape, or form. Let me know. Let's connect. I think I emailed you, which I am incredibly surprised that you read it because of how notoriously
I get a lot
on and off you are with your email.
Yeah. Well, I get a lot of those emails actually, back then and still today. I don't know why your one I just replied, which is very unlike me. Yeah, as Kati well knows, I'm very bad with email, incredibly bad. Kati WhatsApps me, and that's the only way she gets a reply. Anyway, so you messaged me. I replied for reasons I can't quite understand. And then now we have to get into the story, my favorite story of yours. You know which one it is, the panties one.
Oh my God, that's right.
I love that story.
I think the first time I told you that story, you had put out a thing on Instagram that was tell me your funny dyslexic stories. And mine was too long. I couldn't put it in the little text box. So I had to go and put it in a message directly to you. And essentially the mildly condensed version is I was working at this company at the time And I was taking over for like a third-party media agency. So they were bringing things in-house and it was just me. And I told my employer when I interviewed, and I told them like pretty frequently, like, hey, I'm dyslexic. I have dyslexia. Like, I'm going to misspell things. And of course, like all employers they're like, it's fine. We've got spell check. We'll have someone look at it. Like they did that whole rigmarole. And I was like, okay, but like, whatever, bud. So I write up the first quarterly email that like I have ever done. The first one I've ever done, brand new company. I'm like 3 months into my job. And I send it over to my boss.
How many people does it go out to?
It goes out to about 10,000 people. Like this is a healthy email list that this company has been like growing for years. Like 10,000 people. So I've written it, like the top part is like where the company's at. The middle part's like about some philanthropic stuff we've done. And then the bottom part's, I don't remember, like, I don't know, gets services from us, I guess. And I sent it to my boss. He was like, this looks great. Let's change XYZ. I did it. Great. He sent it to the big boss for approval, like the chief operating officer guy at the time. And he was like, looks great. Love it. Let's send it. So I was like, all right, well, we're going to send it. In the philanthropic section, there was a spelling mistake that no one caught until we hit send. And then the chief financial officer, the CFO, caught it and sent me an email and was like, somebody needs to do something. So in there, the company I worked for, we used to donate to raise money for local school food pantries. And I had written, and 3 people, me, my boss, and my boss's boss, had somehow let it slip that it was food panties, or we had donated panties. So, like it was panties instead of pantries, which is, it's just one letter, right? So like my boss, not dyslexic, the boss's boss, not dyslexic, the CFO caught it for some reason. So absolutely mortified, 3 months into this job, like first newsletter out. And I have just sent to 10,000 people that we donate to pantries, panty pantries or food panties. Like I'm just thinking of all the worst things.
To be honest, it's only eclipsed with the blog post that you wrote for me where you said that you were fingering people rather than figuring it out, which is still an absolute classic. And again, not caught by me, not caught by you. But caught by my dad, which was a really weird text to receive.
Oh, by the way, so the 10,000 people one is pretty bad. I mean, we ended up just sending out the email again so that it was in people's inbox twice, hoping they just wouldn't notice and they would delete the earlier one. But that was pretty bad. I went and cried in my car on the way home after that. And it scarred me for a long time. It scarred me for a really long time. I made friends with another person in the office, the nicest gentleman. And anytime I just said something out, he was like meticulous with spelling and grammar. And so I would be like, hey, David, can you look at this for me, please? I'm so sorry, David. He sat right next to me. So it was really nice of him. And then eventually, like, I figured out systems to help. And I like got Grammarly, which was huge because Grammarly does a pretty good job of being like, this doesn't make sense. Food panties?
Next question was going to be, what do you think either were your biggest dyslexic challenges or are now? And then we can go into a little bit about how you're kind of building solutions. So Kati has only learned through osmosis of working beside me. So she's been building out the membership. She does the website. She does the emails. She helps me with being a total nightmare all the time. So she is constantly there learning beside me. But we haven't really, I mean, sometimes if we're on our weekly meeting and I can see you're going awry, I might be like, oh, maybe you should try this strategy. But I've never given you specific advice. Or I don't think I have anyway.
I mean, I was tested when I was a kid and it came back positive, and I got like special classes and special help as a kid. But the transition from school to real life is so big. Like I went to university, I've got 2 degrees. I'm by no means like struggling with intelligence, but the jump from school to real life was just huge. And I got really lucky for my first few jobs. They were small, they were non-for-profit, they weren't outward facing, but I don't know. It just took a long time to like figure out. And three, I think you and I are a great case of some trial and error between each other, right? I'll come to you and I'll be like, I cannot figure this out. And like, I am struggling with X. And you'll be like, why haven't you done Y? And I'll be like, and it'll work. And then vice versa. Like, I feel like we are essentially
me coming to you with challenges, but that's really
not true. That's not true. I would say that we are like a really good, like we are the this is gonna sound weird. We are the petri dish. Like, you know, when you see like in science class and they put like one thing in and two things in and then it like explodes outward. We're the petri dish that like tests the strategies and the things before we can like send them to our community and implement them with like people. Because like if we're talking and it doesn't work for us, there's no way it's going to work for anyone else, you know?
Katie, I need you to get this next question right. That Petri story, what was that an example of a dyslexic strength of? I need you to get this right. This is an on-the-spot test. You're getting fired if you can't get this right.
So it's actually a mix. It's a little bit of narrative reasoning, which is like talking through something. And then also dynamic reasoning, because it's the idea of like using something else to explain something else. Drawing comparisons.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Not fired. Well done.
Thanks. If that's all it is. I wrote blogs on both. So like I am the foremost expert at the current moment in what those are.
Exactly. No, I had faith in you. I wasn't gonna.
I didn't have faith in myself.
You. So I think the example that Katie did there is explaining things through stories, which is one of the most common dyslexic things that we do. And they are engaging, they are interesting, they build trust, they help people understand things, they are more likely to persuade someone of something. And they're a really useful tool that we do without thinking, without realizing, without trying. This is our natural way to explain things. And that's what's really exciting about dyslexia. It's easy and it's simple. And we just do it so effortlessly, the strengths, so effortlessly that often we don't even realize we're doing them. So, but back to the challenges. I think if we were having an honest conversation, I think you probably would say that your biggest challenge, I would guess, is managing your time effectively. And I think that's very fair, because what you have to know about Katie is she does 2,000 things at once. So she has hundreds of jobs. She never sits still. Her favorite thing to do is to do too much, which is very dyslexic of you. So, for example, we were looking at the back end system of the Hive the other day, and she was like, oh, look who did that really cool thing. That looks really cool. Who did that? And she kind of paused for a second. She said, oh, I did that. Oh, that looks great. So you can't leave Katie alone to do tasks, because the problem is she will go 300% on that task. I set some objectives of things I wanted to look at this month. And I said, okay, I need to do 4 of them. So I'm going to do 8. No, I only need 4. Can you do 4? No, I'm going to do 6. No, 4 is fine. You have a lot else on your plate. 4 is fine. Okay, I'm going to do 6. Okay, try and do 4. If you get to 6, great. 4 is fine.
I know so I think myself.
If we were probably honest with yourself. Yes. Well.
It's a double-edged sword on this one.
Tried to do
double-edged sword on this one. So, but I'll explain. So I know myself to know that if I don't give myself a lot, I won't do any of it, right? I am the kind of ADHD and dyslexic that needs pressure in order to get things done. So if I have a Saturday where I have nothing to do, I'm going to lollygag. I'm going to let my ADHD lead me through. Actually, yesterday was a great example. Yesterday morning, I started cooking breakfast with no intention of doing anything else. And I ended up making vegetable broth, a veggie puree, and soup, right? Like, and I was...
I've ever heard.
It is pretty me thing to eat, but it was just, I let my ADHD run. I didn't have anything else planned. And so I didn't have to like force myself into that box. Whereas, so that's half of it, is I have to have the pressure. So if I've got to do 8 by the end of the month, like that's a lot of pressure. And then I have to always set the goal above where it needs to actually be. So you say 4, I shoot for 8. I'm definitely going to get 4 done. You say 4, the likelihood of me getting 4 done is way lower. So it's this weird like game that I've had to play and figure out with myself in particular. And I think some other dyslexics do this kind of thing, this need for like internal, like asking your boss for an early deadline before the actual deadline to like give that buffer room, give that like kind of push, because starting tasks is really hard for me. But yeah, time management I am the time blindest person I know. I just assume everything takes an hour.
I also think, if I was being honest again, and I think you won't mind me saying this, is you're a bit of an overpromiser in terms of your desire for people to think you're great at things. Hopefully not with me anymore, but I've noticed it with other things you've talked about, that your desire for people to think you're capable and for people to think that you're good at things means that you way over deliver, way over promise. You're very capable of letting things kind of like run away with you in terms of like the amount of things you'll take on. So often I'll be saying to Katie in our weekly meeting, are you sure you have time? And you're like, yeah, I have time. And I'm like, please be honest with me if you don't. It's okay. I know I've set you a lot of tasks this week. And I do think that's one of the things that I've seen such a huge improvement on over the last 3 years, is you are so much better at saying, no, I don't have time for that, or like, no, I can't do that, or actually, can I do it this time, or is it okay if I do it this way? I feel like you understand yourself so much better in this regard than maybe when we first started working together. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, and I'm gonna say, like, I don't think I've ever hidden the fact that like I have a deep-seated fear of failure. I don't know where it came from. Actually, it probably came from my mother, but that's for a conversation for my therapist. But I have this deep-seated fear of failure, and it impacts me in a lot of ways. Like, it stops me from doing things, right? I think our community knows at this point, I've wanted to write a children's book, or a book in general, all my life. Like, that's a big goal. I had it since I was in 6th grade. And I haven't done it because I'm more afraid of failure than I am of like the process of doing it. I know I can do it. I write for a living practically. So it's one of those things where that deep-seated fear of failure that stems from dyslexia, right? Like you get beat over the head so many times with like, you know, a C or a D or a failure or whatever. It becomes this thing that you run away from so drastically.
100%. 100%. And what you have to understand about Katie is like, she's so beautiful in her writing. It's not just that she can write, because I mean, I can write. I don't write very well, but I just am constantly in awe of the way that she puts things together, the way she explains things, the way she breaks things down, the imagery that she uses. It's always so beautiful and so well done. So when she says she can write a children's book, she can't just get it over the line. She would write the most beautiful children's book ever. So I think it's been an amazing progression to watch that improve within you and get better. And I know you are writing the children's book at the moment, and it's kind of going on behind the scenes. And to watch you protect your time more and be more aware of, okay, this is what I can manage, this is what I can't manage. Even if it's still a challenge, it feels like it's such a marked improvement. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, I actually just wrote about this in one of our recent weekly newsletters. This past January, I got hit with burnout really, really hard. And not just like I'm burnt out, I'm tired, like I've worked too much kind of burnout, but the kind that comes with anxiety and depression and crying in the bathroom alone at 2:30 in the morning because you can't sleep and you're just so over all of it. And it took a really, really big reality check for me to see that not only was I going through these cycles of like boom and bust where I'd be like really, really great, and then I'd lead into burnout, and then really, really great and lead into burnout. Like, it took a long time to see that cycle. But then in addition to that, I mean, I hit a level of burnout that like personally affected my relationships, right? You and I were trying to plan something big and I couldn't say no. My partner came to me and was like, look, are we still a thing? Like, are we good? And it took something really, really drastic for me to see that, like, I have to protect my time, because if I don't, I am not me. Like, there isn't a me. And so I have been forced to combat a lot of the like negative side effects of dyslexia, because if I don't, like, I don't exist, if that makes sense. Like, there is no me. It's just people pleasing and trying to never fail, which is exhausting and impossible. And I'm really grateful of how you handled it in that moment, actually, because I think I came to you and I was like, look, I need a break. And I was so terrified to tell you that, which I know it sounds ridiculous.
Such a scary boss. I'm terrifying.
I know. Well, it's not you. It's the fear of letting people down and being a failure. And it took so much for me to be like, look, I need time. I can't. And I think I took maybe like 2-3 weeks off. And even then you were like, are you sure? Are you sure? And I was like, yeah, I'm ready to like come back. I feel like I've got my feet under me. I had another job at the time that was eating away at me emotionally and time-wise. It was taking like, I was already working like 50, 60 hours a week for them. So taking a step back from them helped too, but it's become something that I like actively work towards curbing. So I have space to like follow my interests, because you say very rightfully that like, you can't leave me alone to do things, or else I'll be like, what was I wrote a really great guide for the Hive recently. And usually in the past, when we posted things in the Hive, we just like put a link to it and we're like, hey, here's what the guide is. Here's a link to download the PDF. But I had been left alone, and I was like, I don't really like this. This doesn't look great. And I was like, I'm going to try a new format. So I have a new format for the guides. I laid it out differently. So like now you can scroll through the guide rather than just have the link to it. And then I put like resources for people if they wanted to read more articles on it. And it's by freeing up my time and saying no to things, I allowed myself to do things I enjoy, right? Which is making things better for other people and like exploring new ways of doing things. And I actually found that I'm more productive now because I say no to things that aren't serving me, right? Like that I am bad at or that I struggle with. I just say no to them.
I tell you what, you took the words right out of my mouth. That was exactly what I was going to say. Is the lesson that I think so many people could take away from this is you honored the reality of where you were at, of the fact that you are an overcommitter and that time is a struggle for you, and you put in more checks and guardrails, and we work so much better together now because you'll be able to say, you know what, if you need this from me, I need you to do this, or if you're looking for this, then it would be really helpful if we could have this. And you just met yourself where you are rather than try to be the version that you really, really wanted to be. And like the things that you're able to do now is just so much better, and it's so nice to see you so much happier as well. So I think that's been an amazing experience, although maybe it started out negatively. Like where it's got to now, it just feels like such a positive experience. I also wanted to kind of talk to you a little bit about what you said of like, I knew I had to do something about my dyslexia. Otherwise, it was just kind of going to start ruling me, and it was going to start having a real impact. I think there's been a couple of moments where you've had those like, oh no, I haven't been doing this right, and I have to redo things and look at things again and think of things out. What does it feel like when you're there? What does it look like when you're there? What kind of things could maybe you help people prompt that feeling? Because I think I was exactly the same when I started Dyslexia in Adults. I was like, this is fundamentally not working. I can't carry on like this. I have to create wholesale change. And it doesn't matter how scary it is, because my reality right now is not serving me. And this feeling of almost rock bottom, I think, is like how it felt for me. So I'm interested in how it felt for you.
Oh, that's a big one. I think it feels different across the different like cycles I've had of burnout and overwork and that kind of stuff. But this most recent one, when it really came to a head, I don't know. I just like, I'm going to use a metaphor or like a visualization. It's like the idea of you fall down and scrape your knee, like it's no big deal. You get up and keep going. You fall off your bike and you scrape your arm, no big deal. You keep going. You fall off a motorcycle, and like as time goes on, like the vehicle gets bigger, and then eventually you're like jumping out of a plane with no parachute, and you literally cannot survive, right? Like those bruises and those scrapes, you're like, oh, I'm good, I'll keep going. Oh, I'm good, I'll keep going, until eventually you get to this point where you can't keep going. And I definitely got there. Once I was there, I think I had known the problem for a long time. I think I had known that I was an overcommitter and that I worked too hard and that I did too much. And then, like, that's not new to me. I have had bosses in the past who on my annual review have been like, you need to slow down and focus. You need to tackle less. You need to, so the feedback isn't new to me. I guess one of the things that if I were giving like advice to other people is just like really try and step back and look at the flags, right? Like hand on chest, deep breath, take a moment for yourself and stop. Like nothing will fall apart if you don't wait a second, like we're not all, there are doctors in this like community, but we're not all doctors. We're not saving lives. We're not police. We're not stopping crime. Right. So, and even if you're in those fields, you should stop and like take a breath, but taking time to like reset, it's really hard and it's really scary. But the steps that you have to take, you just can't do it, right? You can't jump out of a plane without a parachute. You cannot do it.
I think you've had me say this before, but similar to your scraping your knee analogy, mine is like death by 1,000 paper cuts. Like, maybe you didn't go for that promotion. Maybe you didn't take that career choice. Maybe you didn't go for that opportunity. Maybe you didn't speak up in that meeting. And these little tiny moments, they just add up and add up and add up. And before you know it, you've lost like pints and pints of blood from these tiny paper cuts. And you're kind of like, oh no, I'm actually wildly anemic and really struggling. And I didn't really realize because it's totally loads and loads of these tiny paper cuts before you realize what a grand struggle it is and how it requires grand solutions, and little tips and tricks just don't quite hit the same.
Oh, definitely. Like I am a big fan of tips and tricks and technology and accessibility software. And like, that is my holy grail. I love it. It is what I specialize. Like if we're going to say, hey, who specializes at what? I specialize at knowing like the software and the how to do the things. And it's not going to fix you, right? Like it is a fundamental shift within you as a person that has to happen. You can't just be like, oh, I've got Grammarly now, I'm all better. Like, no, like you're still going to be late for appointments. You're still going to forget appointments. You're going to struggle with your spreadsheets. There's no Grammarly for numbers, right? So it's this, you have to look inwards. The goal is always to catch it before you're jumping out of a plane, right? Like you want to catch it when you're jumping out of a semi rather than, there's a spider in front of me. You want to jump it. You want to deal with it like before it gets too bad. And it's kind of hard. I think the ways that I see it personally within myself is like, I get a little bit irritable. I get really like, I don't want to say negative thoughts, but like I am like more cutting outwardly, if that makes sense. Like I'm just, my words are not as kind. And I feel like the resentment building, I turn vinegary, I think is the best way I can put it. Inside and how I interact with the world. It's not where I want or what I want. And that's usually the sign for me to be like, all right, let's check. Am I doing too much? Yes. Okay. What are we going to cut out? Not what can we cut out? What are we going to cut out? Right. A shift in language like that mentally has changed things. Yeah. The goal is always to catch it earlier.
And then I think the challenges question maybe was a little tricky, but I'm going to just take it up a notch because I know you're not going to enjoy this next range of questions. I already feel it.
Okay. I'm ready.
So I want to talk a little bit about what you think your strengths are, because I know it's been a bit of a journey on finding them, identifying with them, feeling really confident in them, because you and I are the same. We're confident people outwardly, inwardly, sometimes not so much. And I've watched you become really clear on the things you're good at in a really deep way. It's not surface level deep anymore. It really feels very clear. But you probably don't talk about it nearly as much as I do. It's kind of, it's there. Like I'll see you say, oh, I'm so good at that, or I did that really well. And it's so nice to see. But you're not running a podcast every week having to talk about your strengths. So yeah, let's hear you do it. What would you say are the things that make you think the challenges are worth it, or you feel really proud of, or you're excited by and you want to lean into more?
So I'm going to say this. in rediscovering my strengths and really honing in less surface, more intrinsic, the things that I find that are my strengths are the things that I am good at and that I enjoy, which, like, follow me
100%.
here for a second. I am an incredible teacher. I used to teach anywhere from 6-year-olds to like my teachers in high school how to dance. I have a BFA in dance. Like, it's what I did. It's what I do. I absolutely love it. The reason I am so good at dancing is because of my narrative reasoning, like because of that dyslexic strength and teaching people outwardly, like anything, right? It could be the guy next to me teaching him how to use Zoom or whatever. I am so good at teaching because I'm so good at narrative reasoning, and I'm so good at dynamic reasoning as well. This idea that I can communicate to people through pictures, examples, metaphors. It, number one, is the way I communicate. I get stuck when I'm trying to avoid a metaphor, but it makes me so good at teaching. Like 6-year-olds, that's how they think. They think in pictures and images. They don't think, 3-year-olds think in pictures and images. They don't think in cognitive sentences. So communicating to them like, okay, you're going to make a triangle with your leg and your knee, right? And explaining things in shapes rather than be like, you're going to do a passe. Like passe is a French word that has no meaning. So one of my strengths is definitely teaching and dynamic reasoning and narrative reasoning and communicating complex ideas, right? The dance metaphor is great as well, again, for that. Dance is not an easy thing. It's all in another language, French, which is baffling to me. But it's in French. You have to memorize these steps. You have to be counting at the same time. You have to be doing so many things at the same instance. To teach that to a young child is really, really hard. And I can take that complex idea and I can break it down. Or
I'm going to interject because I've got another one that I don't think you're going to list that is 100% one of your dyslexic strengths, is your ability to build a system and see every stage of a process and be able to like break things down, see every element, like see the opportunities and things. Like the amount of times I'll give something to Katie, and if you're dyslexic, one of the things that you should ask for is the ability to wholly own a process. So that I will say to Katie, like, could you just do this for me? Because I have absolute faith she can do it. And the best thing is she will break it into 10 different parts, see all the different elements of it, take it in more complicated directions than maybe I had even thought about it, and just kind of resolve it all in one. And then she'll just return it back to me 10,000 times better than I had even envisioned it, and kind of deliver it in a way that maybe to other people would seem a bit wonky, but to you makes total sense. And it's just my favorite thing about having you as my employee, just the ability to kind of say, you can have this, and I just have absolute confidence that you'll run away with it stunningly, I think is to me such a special source of yours. I completely agree on the narrative reasoning, the explaining things and breaking things down, and we love to kind of chew the fat on things, but that to me is one of the things that maybe you don't like see as often because you're doing 10,000 things at once all the time.
I definitely agree with, like, okay, as dyslexics, we have to own the process. Like if it is not ours and we have to deal with somebody else's system, it's a nightmare. My partner and I, when we do finances, he's in charge of the finances and how they get done. And it makes absolutely no sense to me. And I've just committed that I show up to our little like weekly, monthly meeting and say, okay, what do you need from me? I understand. Like, this is what we can spend. This is what we can't spend. Like, this is our plan. But how he has it done is not how I would do it. And so there's a road barrier there. Like, if you are dyslexic, own it or don't own it. Don't deal with in the middle. And then the other piece I'd say, like, on our back end side of things, a great example of this is I love you, Natalie. I love you. And you are incredibly efficient in that you just, you're disorganized. You get in, you do the thing you need to do, and you get out, right? Which is kind of a dyslexic strength too, right? Like, your blinders are on. So I'm going to rat you out. We have a back end for the Hive, our paid community that is fantastic. It's full of resources and great people. And I initially set it up. She's over here laughing. You can't hear it on mic, but she's laughing. So I initially set it up and I was like, okay, cool. Here's our plans. Here's our memberships. It's all set up. It's good to go. And then I left it alone.
Oh no.
And then I come back one day. Yeah. I come back one day and there's like 46 plans and there's like 2 people on each plan. And I'm like, what is going on here? And so I had to
kick me out.
I kicked you out. I said, Natalie, please do not touch this. I'm going to fix it. And then from now on, if you need something, let me know and I will manage it for you. Or if you want to learn the system, that's the other piece. If you want to learn the system, I will totally teach you. Right. So it works out for both of us. But like there's pieces of that system that like even you don't know, right? So like I have a naming convention. So there's like the Hive membership. Then there's Legacy Hive membership. So that's for all the old plans that we no longer support. And then there's Secret Hive membership, right? And Secret is our discounts that I just let slip that we might have discounts if you're download the Dyslexia at Work guide and we'll see what you get or don't get.
To be honest, you could have wrapped me out on so many other ways. I'm so disorganized in 1,000 different ways. I actually think that one is probably the least bad. I mean, the range of a disorganized, my own basically only organized in any way, shape, or form because I basically have other people doing the. I have just given up on organization. I just let other people do it. Other people organize everything I need to organize, and that's fine. That is like my strategy.
It's me with time management, 100%. Sometimes you just have to like say like, look, I give up. This is not for me. I'm not going to figure it out. I think that's another huge thing that we preach. Like
I just have 100%. Yeah. I have other strengths, other things that I'm capable of. And if I spent my entire life trying to be organized, I would never have achieved where I am at right now. Katie, I'm very conscious you need to go for your eye appointment. Speaking of being organized.
I do. I am not going to miss this. I have not had an eye exam since I was in like college. I actually fully broke my glasses yesterday. So it's time. It's time.
Katie messaged me going like, I can move up because I tried to move our meeting because I'm disorganized and I double booked my appointments. And Katie messaged me being like, yeah, I can do that time, but I've done the most adulting thing ever. I have actually organized an eye exam and I cannot miss it. I have to be 45 minutes. So you do have to go. I just have one last question for you before we wrap this up.
Okay.
Honest answer. It doesn't matter which way I genuinely don't know what you're going to say. If you had the choice, would you be dyslexic or not?
Oh, hell yeah. 100%. It just colors so much of who I am, right? Like, first off, the struggle, like, okay, I love books, right? And in a book, usually there's a character who's fine, then they struggle. And then after they're done struggling, they like triumph and overcome their struggles. And then they realize
definitely in your triumph era. Yeah, 100%.
I am in my like Taylor Swift triumph era. Watch out. Yeah, but like I feel like that's my journey and I wouldn't get rid of it or change it. I also love the way that I think. I love how I see things differently and how I can communicate with kids or other neurodiverse people in a way that like I say things to my partner sometimes and he's like, "What? That makes no sense." And I'm like, "No, it does." And then I break it down and he's like, "Oh, that does make complete sense," right? I wouldn't change it for anything in the world. It's what makes me me and it's my story and my arc. So
and how long do you feel like you felt like this? How long have you not wanted to change it for?
I think it's actually been a blip that changes, right? So when I was in school in my like defiant era, I was like, screw you, dyslexia. I'm going to make this work. And I did, right? And I went to college and I got a degree in history, which means I had to write a whole bunch of stuff. It comes and goes, right? I think now, more recently, it's been more consistent that I just don't care that I have dyslexia, that it is what it is and you're going to deal with it or go away, you know, like.
Or your loss. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Love that.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I mean, I didn't know which way you were going to go, honestly. I think there was a world where you could have said, it is quite frustrating. I do find it quite difficult sometimes, but I'm pleased to hear that that's how you feel. That's how I feel as well. There's times where I didn't feel like that and that's okay. But right now just would never get rid of the strengths. They just feel like such opportunities in my life. So thank you for the honest conversation that you didn't know you were having and you didn't sign up for. But you did take part in, so I am very appreciative. And you will find Kati writing our weekly newsletter. You will find Kati in the Hive putting together a lot of the content that we put together. Where else will we find you? Maybe writing the occasional blog. You're going to be doing a live event with us in a week's time. There's a lot of like different bits and pieces that you're just like infiltrating. Don't let Kati anywhere near your business because she'll just like infiltrate in.
I will. And then you'll like suddenly wake up and be on YouTube. So we are on YouTube. If you are watching this or listening to this, we do have a YouTube that is slowly growing over time. Let's see. That's why you're on TikTok, because I forced you to be on TikTok.
And now I have 65,000 followers. So yeah, I mean, you are mildly useful occasionally.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit everywhere and always happy to be there.
Thank you so much, Kati. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.